welcome to today's video. In today's video we're actually going to be completing a basic oil and filter service on my 2014 Vauxhall Zafira Tourer, also known as an Opel Zafira Tourer, or also known as the Vauxhall Zafira C or Zafira C. Now, during the course of the actual service, I mention a couple of things. One of them is waiting until next year to complete the next oil change, or when the oil quality meter gets down to 0%. After examining the quality of the filter and the contents of the filter, there were not a huge amount, but there were small little bits of white metal present. So what I'm thinking of doing is taking an oil sample probably around September, October time and sending it off to get it analysed. It is unlikely that there's any major problems because the engine's only covered 42-ish thousand miles from new, but it would be a good idea just to see what's going on anyway. What is also a good idea, because it is a diesel, and diesels are, despite what people like to say, are filthy. They are disgusting, especially with the oil that comes out of them. I really don't think I want to go nearly sort of 10,000 miles and 12 months before the next change, so I may actually implement a twice yearly oil and filter change. A couple of other items that I haven't covered in this video is the greasing with lithium grease of the rear automatic parking brake. There is running across the rear beam, or not the rear beam actually, it's the rear subframe. There is a cable with an exposed piece of cable which is part of the parking brake mechanism. You can apply lithium grease to that. I tend to do this once or twice a year, once before winter, once after winter. And I tend to apply a bit of lithium grease to that particular point, and also the pivot points on the actual calipers themselves, just to keep them lubricated. The cable goes up to the motor, and the motor for the automatic parking brake lives, if you're looking at the back of the car, it is left hand side rear up behind the rear bumper in that quarter panel area, so it lives up there. So it is worth making sure that it is clean and as dry as possible during the winter months, in fact all months really. Other things that I haven't done is, on this occasion I haven't taken any of the wheels off and re-grease the caliper pins, the sliding caliper pins rather, but that is something that I may do later in the summer before next winter, given that the car is now 6 years old. I've owned it since 2015, so I've owned it from actually almost exactly a year old. So I think coming up to 6 years, it probably would be a good idea to get the wheels off and grease the sliding calipers. I'm hoping that it's been done during points of other servicing, but you can never sort of guarantee that. You generally sort of don't get the work done unless you ask for it. What else? When I'm talking about the DPF, I mentioned that there is what I think is a post DPF / catalyst lambda probe. Looking at it a bit further, it's not actually a probe, it's a piece of pipe work which I think measures it's part of the measuring system that measures load on or within the DPF. So if there is a certain amount of load in the DPF, it triggers a DPF regeneration, and I think that pipe is actually to do with that. Just trying to think if there is anything else that I need to mention. Obviously the obvious things of making sure that you dispose of the oil safely and environmentally. So take it to your local tip when they're open, which at the moment, this is recorded in April 2020. My local tip isn't open due to various reasons. So I need to hold on to the oil for a little bit. But other things, make sure that you protect your hands, protect your eyes. If you're going to be laying on the floor, what I did in this instance is I got a big plastic panel which used to belong to an old shed, laid that on the floor, and I was able to use that to scoot in and out under the car. That's pretty much it. Tools that you'll need off the top of my head: to remove the belly plate, so the lower tray, you need an 8mm socket and a flat blade screwdriver to pop out the pins which hold the belly plate to the inner wing area, to the inner splash guard. The sump bolt is a 13mm. The bolts holding in the glove box surround are 7mm. The oil filter is 32mm, so you need a 32mm socket to get the oil filter off. It's one of those cartridge types. And the air box uses a standard crosshead screwdriver, so you just need a crosshead screwdriver as well. And that should pretty much cover it. Anyway, let's get on with the video. So I've purchased a few items to complete a very basic service on my 2014 Zafira Tourer. Normally I would be entrusting the service to a garage, mainly so I can keep the service history book stamped up, but due to the current lockdown situation and the fact that the oil does need changing, I'm going to be doing it myself. So I've ordered from my favourite Vauxhall parts supplier, AutoVox, and what I've ordered for a very basic service, very similar to what I would normally order for other cars for a basic service. We have some oil, which is in here. We have an air filter, and the air filter is a genuine GM part, which is nice. That's the part number there. That's a genuine GM or genuine Opel air filter. We also have a charcoal activated cabin filter. Again, this is a genuine Opel part. Part number is here. We also have the oil filter, and to go along with the oil filter I also have a selection of copper washers for the sump drain plug. So let's have a look at the oil filter. Oil filter is a canister type, so it actually comes in a removable canister. You've got the O-ring there, and you've got the actual filter here. I haven't got the fuel filter because the fuel filter is quite large and it's an absolute pain to replace because you do lose quite a bit of diesel when you actually do it. So it was also replaced last year and doesn't need to be replaced, from what I can understand, every single year. I think it's every other year. Oil wise, excuse me, because we have the 2-litre diesel with a diesel particulate filter, we need to have special low ash oil. So let's just take a look at the oil that we've actually got. And here's the oil. It is another Opel original. It's Dexos 2 approved, and it is a fully synthetic oil suitable for both, I believe, looking at these regulations, both petrol and diesel engines. Also complies with certain VW, Mercedes-Benz and BMW regulations as well. And there is 5 litres of this, which is enough for the change. I think the sump itself is around 4.5 litres in capacity. So it's not very many items, but it should be enough for a basic service. And once, obviously, everything is over, the car can be MOT'd, and I can also get the cam belt and water pump replaced, which I would happily undertake myself, but because I use the car for business purposes, it's always nice to have somebody else do it, so that if it breaks, you've got somebody else to blame. Anyway, let's get started with the service. Welcome to today's video. Today we're going to be doing a very basic service on this 2014 Zafira Tourer, also known as the Zafira C. As you can see, it is due an oil change, and it has completed in total 42,764 miles, and it's approximately 8,000 to 9,000 miles since the last service, or last year. Now, this is currently being completed during a lockdown period, so I can't drive the vehicle anywhere. So what I'm doing is I'm letting it warm up here with the heating, ventilation, air conditioning turned off. I've already got it up onto the ramps, and I've chocked both rear wheels and applied the handbrake. Once the engine is turned off, I'll also be engaging first gear just to keep the car in position a little bit better. So what we're going to do is we're going to leave it to warm up, but we're actually going to start on the inside because I'm not currently dirty, so I may as well start on one of the inside jobs, and that is replacing the cabin filter. So the cabin filter is actually located behind this glove box. So we're going to empty out the glove box first. We're going to be starting on the cabin filter, and I've got the glove box down. You've got a couple of tabs that you can press to move it down. You've got one here and one on this side, and that moves the whole glove box down. There is a little attachment here, which if I just move this up, I should be able to pop that out of position. So we'll take a look at that in a second. And in a bit more detail, this, which is basically, if I just focus in on that, this here, which is basically a sprung-loaded mechanism for the glove box, actually attaches onto here. There's a little tag there that it goes under, and that stops the glove box from just going like that. But you need to remove it so we can actually get to the remove the glove box like that, so we can actually get to this panel, which we then need to remove using these, what look like, I think, I want to say 8mm, but they may actually be smaller, individual bolts, and that will drop this whole panel forward and allow us to get to the cabin filter. So let's just move the glove box out of the way, and we'll get this panel removed. So just a slight correction to bolt size, they're actually 7mm bolts, and once you remove all 4 of them and remove the front panel for the fuse board, you can actually pull the item free. So that's the actual mounting frame pulled free. Now, the best way to get into this is to, from outside the car, you'll be able to see this panel here. If we pull this panel forward, and it is, I think, clipped in on the side, if I remember from memory, there it is, and clipped on the other side. If you pull it forward like so, there's your cabin filter. Now, it looks like the last one that was used was actually a Bosch filter, which is good, so quality parts have been employed by the garage that normally services this car. And to get to the filter, we just need to stick our fingers in and gently pull it out. And if you're having problems getting it out, you can actually pull it aside to crush it into the middle, and then gently pull the filter out like so. And there's the filter, which is actually not in bad shape. It's still able to filter correctly. You'll also notice there is an airflow direction marking there, which was facing downwards. And we need to replicate that for the new filter. And the new filter is an OEM GM branded or Opel branded filter. It's MAN filters are the OEM manufacturer by the looks of it. Airflow is, just trying to get that into shot there. So move this wire out the way, which serves the glove box light. Pop the filter in like so. Gently easing it into position because it does snag a little. There we go. Push it all the way down. And to get this in, it's best to go in at an angle like so, so you actually get the bits of plastic to go under the side panel trim, which is here. You get this in sideways, so that locks into position. And if we come round, the rest of it should pop in like so, and that's now in position. This base panel can go back up there, out of the way, and we can start putting in our 4 7mm bolts. And here we've got our little pulley thing there ready to go. But first off, we just need to get those bolts back into position. With the glove box putting back into position, I can hook over the little retracty cable here onto this little hook, and that'll just need teasing into position. A little bit fiddly, so don't worry if it just takes a little bit of time to get it over. That's now in. I can now put the glove box up, pop it in on this side, and there we go. And the base panel goes back up into here. There are a couple of tags that goes onto in the carpet. Once that's in place over the air vents, and pop back in under the trim, the cabin filter is now complete. Next task is to move on to the air filter. So the air filter is located on what would be, if you're looking from the front, the left hand side of the engine bay, or if you're on a right hand drive vehicle, it'll be on the driver's side. And it is held in with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cross-headed screws. We've got the wiring here for the airflow meter, so we're going to try and do this without disturbing the airflow meter, although it may be a good idea to undo this Jubilee clip here and move that out of the way. So let's get that underway. So a little bit on removal of this wiring connector. So the wiring connector is normally plugged in like so, with this yellow locking tab in position like that. To remove, depress the yellow locking tab, which allows us to depress this black part, and gently pull the actual wiring connector off of the airflow meter, which we're doing like so. Once removed, we can just pop that out of the way, like so. Pop this out of the way, put that there, so that we don't lose it. So that is here. and we can go about removing the cover to the airbox. With the airbox top cover removed, we actually see we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 screws, as previously mentioned. One right at the back, which is underneath here. Put that out of the way. Air filter is simply removed like so. There is a foam panel on the air filter which stays in place. Clear out any leaves or other debris that may be present. And that's the air filter there. So if there are a lot of leaves and debris in here, you might want to vacuum this out. However, this isn't too bad, so I can get away with popping in a new air filter. This is the new filter. It's a genuine GM item. MAN filters appears to be the OEM. This one doesn't have the GM badging, but it is a MAN filter, so it is an OEM filter. Can't see any date markings on it. I would assume those might be date markings. 27107 might be the part number. This one, yeah, 27107. It's very likely to be the part number. GM part number is 132-72719. So 27107 is the MAN part number. So let's pop this one in. It is perfectly square in shape, so it will go in any orientation by the looks of it. And in we go. Oh, actually I might be wrong, it might actually be slightly over square, which in which case goes in like so, so that the vent or fins in the filter, or the filter media, is actually pointing downwards like that, as you can see there. So you make sure that's in position. Let's move the old filter out of the way. Grab the cover and move the airflow meter out of the way. Carefully put the cover back on. You'll notice that the screws don't come fully out, so they actually stay in the cover. So when you get to a point where it's actually tight, gets tight to unscrew, then the screw is actually fully out. So it's actually best to do this using hand tools rather than an automated tool, because you may not get that same signal that the screw is actually out of the bottom portion. So let's get this back in. Like so, in we go. And the next job will be to drain out the oil and replace the filter and fill up with fresh oil. Because this engine has a diesel particulate filter, you need to use oil that is specific to this engine. So the oil that I've got is GM Dexos compliant, which means it's low ash and fully synthetic, and it has a 5W30 weight, so that generally means it's thinner at cold temperatures. And that has actually gone down onto the Undertray, which I'll be able to get to later. So I just need to get another screwdriver just to finish that job. So with the cover back on, you can put the wiring connector back on, put the airflow meter back in. Don't forget that is on this one it's a 7mm. The airflow meter cable's actually got this little tag here, and that locks into one of these little points here, so you can actually keep that nicely tucked out of the way. Don't forget to, obviously, little yellow lock-in pin, put that back in. That's fully in. And what we're going to do now is move various tools out of the way. Just start the engine. Parking sensors off. Into neutral. Gently out with the clutch. Accidentally hit the traction control button, but we have no engine management lights, and that all seems to be fine. So we'll just let that gently idle for a second and cut the power, remove the keys, back into first, and now we can start on the oil. Slightly, albeit slightly wobbly look underneath at the undertray. So you've got two parts to the undertray. You've got this inspection cover, which you can use during servicing, and you've got the main cover, which is held in with what I think is an 8 here. It's also held in up here and in a couple of other places around the other side, and also up front. And you would typically want to remove the whole cover when inspecting the subframe. However, there are some convenient points here for putting some rust proofing into the subframe, which we will do later. First off though, we're going to remove 1, 2, 3 and 4. You can see a hinged point here. That will allow us to hinge this panel down so we can actually get in there and see what's going on. However, because I've just realised, because we are a bit low here, we may actually need to remove the whole panel. So we are going to remove all of these here. Actually, it would also give us a bit of an opportunity to have a look at this rust here, which is on one of the welds, so we can actually get something onto that just to stop that getting any worse. Over that side actually looks to be mostly okay. A little bit up there, so we might want to get some neutralizer onto there as well. So it's actually probably a good idea to get this whole thing off. Right, let's get underway. So with the undertray out of the way, we can see we have the various fittings here. We've got those plastic fittings that go into these splash panels on the front and the wing area. You can see where I want to do a bit of rust proofing on the subframe area. But the rest of the subframe, as I've treated this over previous years, actually looks to be in pretty good order. The tool that I lost was actually located on this section, so I managed to get that back. And the sump plug, if we just move this back out of the way, is here. Oil filter is up here, and hopefully we should be able to get to that without having to remove the wheel. However, looking at it, it is going to be a bit of a splash onto here, so we'll need to protect this inner CV boot with some rags. So I think the first thing to do is to get the oil out of the engine. Now, I'm hazarding a guess at size. I want to say 13, but it may be slightly bigger. Also gives you a good opportunity to check the underside at this particular angle, and we can see that there's a nice, that hole should be there, but that's a nice hole to put some rust proofing into. There's also a nice cavity up here that we can also rust proof as well, which actually, feeling that, I think I've actually done that previously, but we can dislodge any sort of dirt that's up there. Also gives you a good opportunity to investigate the bushes on these wishbones, which look to be pretty solid, to be honest with you. Also gives you an opportunity to investigate flexi joints on the exhaust, which is in excellent shape. And this here is, as I understand it, a combined catalyst and DPF module. And that's actually looking pretty nice as well. There's our lambda probe, or one of the lambda probes anyway. That's the post catalyst. I think there's one before the catalyst as well. Over on this side we've got our 6-speed gearbox and final drive. Gearbox is actually here, that's the final drive. And obviously up in the back of the engine there is the starter motor, and you can see the alternator over there, and right at the top there is the air conditioning pipework. The scuttle panel at the top does actually remove, so once that is out of the way you do actually get quite a bit of access to the engine bay, but at the moment it is a little bit unwieldy to get into. Main engine mount at the back of the engine, you can obviously investigate and check that condition as well. That actually looks to be in good shape. Right, let's get the oil out. So that's now emptying. The sump plug bolt itself is actually a 13mm, and because of its design, the fact that it's right on the edge of the sump, it just allows you to do a couple of turns and it actually starts draining the oil out of the engine. So there's no risk of removing it and getting completely splashed with oil, which is quite nice. So we're just going to let that drain out, and once it gets down to just a mere trickle, we will remove the plug completely and then allow it to drain out a bit more. In the meantime, let's get some rust proofing into here, and also let's have a look at that oil filter. We'll need quite a large socket to put onto the end of the oil filter just to remove the actual cap on there. So let's have a bit of a feel. We will need, I would say, it's going to be about a 24mm, I guess. So I've got one of those indoors, and I'll go and fetch that. Otherwise, you could probably get it off with an adjustable spanner. Also gives you an opportunity to check under here as well. That's the aircon compressor. That is the serpentine drive belt, which runs up to an idler pulley, another idler pulley, a crank pulley, and the alternator. And something else I've done before starting to drain the oil is to just remove the oil filler cap. There's sort of two schools of thought about this, but generally I remove it so there's no vacuum pockets generated within the engine. But again, two schools of thought on that one. Right, let's go and get a suitable socket for that oil filter. So to loosen the oil filter you need an enormous 32mm socket. Well, enormous by car terms. It's lucky I have this, as I've actually got this for, I bought this originally for a hub nut on a Rover Sterling, which was, funny enough, 32mm. My XJ40 uses one, I think it's 27 or 30. So with it loosened to a point, you will get oil to trickle out of it. You can see there I've actually put some rags over the drive shaft in a CV boot, but it actually trickles down quite nicely onto and through the subframe. Now the sump bolt is hollow, so this is why when I was removing it, oil was trickling out quite nicely. It obviously just goes out of the little holes there. Got this washer here which I'll need to remove and replace, and obviously once the filter has stopped dripping I'll be able to remove that, get it out the way, and we can have a look at how to install the new filter. So here's the old oil filter. You can see its orientation is with this part at the top. So if you have a look at the new filter, that will go in with this large bit on the bottom and this part on the top. Let's do a quick compare, and they do look the same. So there is a ring around here, an O-ring rather, which will be replaced by this O-ring, and we will lubricate that with some fresh engine oil. So let's get this filter out and take a look at it. So that's the old filter removed. Unlike a petrol engine, diesels have a lot more soot floating around inside them, so this is actually pretty much expired. It has lived its life. A little bit of oil left in there, so what we will do is we will pour that out into the drainage thingy, which is there. Then we can go about installing the new O-ring and a new filter. It'd probably be worth giving this a bit of a wipe out inside as well. So let's get that sorted out. So that's the new oil filter popped in. I've actually lubricated the top seal and the seal inside the filter housing. There is a warning on there not to tighten it more than 25 Newton meters, which is approximately just over hand tight. Lubricated the new sealing ring here, so all that remains is to put it back in the car. But what we will probably do first is give the housing a bit of a clean out with one of the rags that I've got down there. So with the oil filter back in place, you tighten it just over hand tight and it should sit flush with the housing. You will find as you are putting it in that it does actually start to get tighter beyond a certain point. That's because the tip of the filter is actually going into a small pipe inside of that housing. What I've also done is cleaned out the housing as well, just to make sure that everything is nice and clean in there. And the next thing that we're going to do is to get a new crush washer onto this sump bolt. So looking at it, the new one is a, try and get a focus on that, 20 by 26 by 1.5 mil thick. It seems to fit pretty well. Let's try and catch that before it goes off somewhere. There we go. So that's the sump bolt. Give it a bit of a clean. And let's go and pop that back on. So standard practice applies with a sump bolt. Never ever over tighten it. And we probably want to go just over hand tight. Okay, so oil capacities. My vehicle has, I think, the A20 DTH. That's 4.5 litres of oil, including the filter. We've got 5 litres of oil, so let's pop in 4.5, and we've got half a litre left over if we need to top up at all during changes. So I've just put in 4.5 litres of engine oil. Remove the makeshift funnel that I made. Pop the cap back in. There we go. So, remove these bits. Do a quick visual check underneath. And there doesn't appear to be any leakages from the oil filter or the sump plug. So, we can go about starting up for the first time. Okay. So before coming back into the car, I've actually washed my hands because I had the panel on the floor. Thankfully I didn't get too messy. So into neutral, pop the key in, and start it up, turn that off, and there we go. Oil pressure light has gone out, engine is idling. Get it circulating around the engine. And there we go. All that remains now is to apply some of the... Oh, we're actually going to reset the change oil soon warning. To do that, I need to remember how to do that. I think I go to menu, so oil life, so I can do set and clear. So oil life, hold down set. Are you sure you wish to reset? Yes. And that should, well, I was hoping that would read 100%. Let's turn off the engine, on with the ignition, off of that because that's really annoying. Many bongs. Yes, yes. God, it's worse than an XJ40 for stupid warnings. Are you sure you want to reset? Yes. There we go, and that's now reading 100%. So, just need to monitor that, and it is the 19th of April 2020, so this will need to be done either when that hits 0% or that hits 19th of April 2021. So all that remains to do now is to put the bottom panel back on after doing a bit of rust proofing, and that's pretty much it. But for now, I'd like to thank you all very much for watching. Hope you have found this video interesting and useful. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the notification bell, like, comment, all of that stuff, and I will see you next time.